The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it, the Friday editions here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Justice is training wheels no more, so that is all right. So I'm supposed to be at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill in Gretna. I am not. I am in the Casa de Schmidt kitchen. There's a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Isolation going on. Thankfully, it's just, I feel like garbage, but I'm not going to get anybody sick. So, Elijah, you're the man. Thanks for going MacGyver today and tomorrow. We'll be doing shows leading into Nebraska-Rutgers noon to 2, but there'll be some studio shows. So we'll be back at it at the Single Barrel for UCLA. And away we go. What we do have, though, is Nebraska is Rutgers and a loaded show for you. 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Elijah and Justice have a bet going as into what time hack I melt down and start hacking away on the microphone. They are wondering how soon and how far I can get through this first segment. Elijah, you look angelic with the window and that light behind you.
Thank you.
It's all good. Good to see both of you. What's the good word today? It's Hall of Fame Day, man, as you've got Ndamukong Suh apparently roaming around the Union and on East Campus today, which is really cool. We'll hear some anecdotes on Ndamukong Suh from Tom Segura and one Tom Brady. Brian Christopherson this hour. Bill Doleman next hour. Jacob Padilla going to join us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat. That will happen around 5:25. And then he's imaginary. He wears red. It is Clausborne with the Friday forecast. And we'll talk with Claus. We'll get our picks. And we'll get into the weekend. Elijah, how you been?
Good. I'm not sure if you see this, my left eye has been dealing with some allergies as of late. Just the left eye. I'm not quite sure why that is. So it's all red and inflamed, and I'm sure I look absolutely insane for those watching on the stream, but I'm doing all right, just a little bit itchy. Other than that, had a nice little morning on the golf course, so that's always a big win. Back-to-back pars. Can you believe that, Schmitty?
I cannot.
It was back-to-back short par fours, to be fair, but back-to-back pars nonetheless. So I take that. We take those and run. Did I break 100? Hell no, I didn't, but it's still progress in the right direction. So that was a good little morning. I'm glad you, Schmitty, were able to get yourself a little bit of rest and relaxation, get yourself feeling right. I know you do not like during football season getting sick, so our thoughts are with you. If there was a Purple Heart for radio, you have earned it this week, really this entire summer, from the broken ankle on the golf course now to powering through the pain with the sickness. You have earned it tenfold. So I'm gonna do some research and see if there's any sort of award we can give you to honor your service during this trying time.
You're laying it on way thick. The wife is home and she's a nurse, and they are adjectives she uses towards me, at me a lot whenever I'm feeling under the weather. If I'm feeling under the weather, if I've got an air cast on my left ankle, I'll let you guys do the math on the words she uses and what she likes to refer to. She has a couple, 3 favorite words that's kind of cute until she keeps using them over and over. And then it turns into being berated. So, that's 21 years of love. We'll get to
that's from the single guy here with Justice, the single guy me. Hey, count your blessings where you got them, Schmitty.
Sure. Well, tomorrow will be a blessing or a curse with Rutgers and that ground attack coming in. We'll get into it in a little bit. We'll get our starting 5 shout-outs going. we do this tradition, and it is Call Your Shot Friday. And I don't know what kind of shots you're going to be able to have in Memorial Stadium in 2025, but I imagine there'll be some sort of bar you can belly up to. It's not just going to be a beer and wine crowd. So that is something that's thumbs up, man. Board of Regents today, 7-1. You heard Will Wilson's story and Jeff Moates' reader locally on it. So, yeah. After the Nebraska volleyball team dismantles your team at the Devaney Center, you can buy that other Big Ten foe that made the trip into Lincoln to see their volleyball team get steamrolled by Coach Cook's Big Red Army. You can buy them a beer and say, hey, it's all right. It happens to everybody.
I do have something I'd like to say here, because there was the one vote from the Board of Regents against selling alcohol at Memorial Stadium. That came from Regent Kathy Wilmot, who had the quote along with her vote against that: "We are selling our soul." I read that. What kind of rock are we living under? Let's be honest with ourselves. Can we say that? It
happened a long time ago. It happened when you moved to the Big Ten, okay? Let's not just make it an alcohol.
That's what I'm saying. This has been about money for over a decade now. From moving to the Big Ten, to TV media rights, to NIL. We're selling our soul. We've been selling our soul. That's been the reality of college football over the past 10 years. Also,
everybody's got a price, baby.
Also, let's look at an average college game day experience here in Lincoln, Nebraska. The people who want to drink find booze one way or another, whether it's at the supermarket and they bring it down to the tailgate, whether they go to a bar or a local establishment in downtown Lincoln, whether they're putting it into a plastic bottle and sneaking it into Memorial Stadium. People find a way to drink for Husker football games if they want to drink. Why does the university want that business to go elsewhere, to local other businesses? And we understand they could use the business as well, downtown bars and restaurants especially. But once people are in Memorial Stadium, why not find a way to make a few extra dollars? That's the reality of college football. You need dollars as much as you can get right now. That's why we have TV rights. That's why we have conference realignment. Money is king right now in college sports, especially college football. People are going to find a way to drink. You got to find a way to capitalize on that, because if you're not the ones capitalizing it, someone else in Lincoln is capitalizing on it. So let's stop living under a rock and say we're selling our souls. This is the reality that we live in right now. People are going to drink, A, and B, money is the bottom line in college football right now. So good on you, Nebraska, for saying let's find a way to make some money off of it. It's as simple as that, and it's a 7-1 vote. So I'm just pointing out the one lone person who has a moral compass still, I guess. But let's not live under a rock. This is a reality of modern America, modern college athletics. Good on Nebraska for having alcohol in Memorial Stadium, because people that want to drink for a Husker football game are going to find a way to drink. You might as well be the ones making money off of it.
Here's the thing. It's not, it's revenue. Okay. It's revenue, just like you're making money off of Pepsi to have the pouring rights versus Coke, the good old days. And I don't dislike Pepsi, but a fountain Coke at Memorial Stadium 30 years ago was amazing. It never has tasted better in my life. Anywho, it's an amenity, all right? There are some fans, and I don't know how many of them, that want, or dare I say need, the last decade, something to take the edge off with what you're watching or enhance the enjoyment of what you're watching. So don't be this sore thumb in the league that is holier than thou when your basketball programs are letting it happen. You just got to modernize. And that also helps reinforce this infrastructure and what you want to do with the stadium. Now go all in and get me a party deck in the south end zone. While we're at it, fire up a dispensary and a gambling kiosk.
As long as
we're selling out, let's just leave nothing left to the imagination. I mean, I kid a little bit, but the NBA, Major League Baseball, the first bet of the year, ironically, was made at the Great American Ballpark for Major League Baseball, the place that Pete Rose, who died this week, got booted out of baseball because the dude was gambling. He besmirched the game, and now you can go into the old Riverfront Stadium or whatever the hell it's called and put the money line down on the Reds to win the opener. So the world has changed, and you either adapt or you die. Last thought on this. You did have Coach Osborne's message that he relayed to Jack Stark, one of the regents, and Jack Stark was the team psychologist forever. I'm anxious to get Doleman's take on this because, Bill was, part of that network with T.O. and the crew when they were printing titles. Tiger Shark wants a Husker strip club on the rooftop. That would end poorly. All right. The win one for the stripper mantra will always belong to Miami. All right. Instead of win one for the Gipper, win one for the stripper, that belongs to Miami. So
I will say a strip club on the rooftop seems like a bad idea. That is one fall off the pole from Cinnamon, and we got issues.
Win one for the stripper could also apply to Louisville basketball.
It's not just a busted ankle.
True justice. Says win one for the stripper also applies to Louisville basketball.
Rick Pitino, baby.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So Osborne said it will change things, and it might rev up Memorial Stadium to be a little bit more intense. And, that Nebraska nice is wonderful, and you can still be it before and after the game. But during the game, it needs to be more like Colorado every game, right? For that 12th man, that home field advantage. So we'll check in with Bill Doleman.
And back to my point earlier as well, do you know the flood of people that you see walking out of Memorial Stadium at halftime every single Saturday to make it back to their tailgate and to pour themselves a drink and to pound it on their way back into the stadium so they have something in their system before the second half? It's a reality. Like it happens. Why don't you want to be the ones making money off it? You know what? Have a Cornhead lager on tap, and half of all those purchases goes to the NIL fund. As a Husker fan, if you're against this, would you rather be spending, not sure how much people are donating to 1890, so however much you're donating in, if you are a donor, think about that amount. Would you rather pay that amount and get nothing back every single month, or would you rather go get yourself a couple beers in the stadium and have that exact same amount go to the NIL fund? It's a reality here.
What's the price point? I mean, do you have strength in numbers? You're going to have 86,000. You're going to have killer schedules. You're going to have, for the most part, a lot of helmet games and some ooh and some wow opponents beyond the Michigans and Ohio States of the world. You're going to get SC and Penn State and allegedly Penn State and UCLA, Wisconsin. I mean, those fan bases like to have a good time. It's okay. It's okay to make this move. And what's your price point going to be? Is it going to be $12? Is it going to be bleacher beers? Are you going to be charging airport pricing at the stadium? Am I dropping, $13.50 for a domestic? Am I going to spend $15 for a craft? I don't know. They can kind of name their price. Quite honestly, I would keep it lower, a little bit lower, just because you're going to have such a mass of humanity. And I think it'll work out. Let's talk Rutgers, Nebraska. Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, going to be with us in a little bit. And, this ball game tomorrow is pretty intriguing. And I'm guilty of this, and I think a lot of us are, of just overanalyzing. And we've put a referendum, and when I say we, I mean I say me and a lot of folks. The next one is the next, oh my God, moment in the season. And I know I'm guilty of that. That being said, it is going to set the course, or it could set the course of the rest of the year. Do you go into, the month of October, and do you exit the month of October similar to what last year was at 5-3? Where are you at? And tomorrow's a monster step, 4-2, 5-1, and how it shakes out. It could be a hell of a ball game tomorrow, and you still end up 4-2 going into your bye week. But you need to be 5-1. And right now. It's critical ball game for Nebraska. And from a confidence standpoint, because, Matt Rule's been open and honest enough that his team's still trying to learn how to win, right? And you took some tough lessons from the Illinois game. You got to apply those lessons now. Let's get our starting five. As you're welcome to check us out in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, and of course along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Jeff is in, Uncle Larry checks in, Tiger Shark is here, Arlo is in along with Justin, Brian, and Tuck also say what's up. And he says, hey, we got to have tomorrow. Let's start hydrating now. Chasing again, says Tuck 0.3. That old BAC number has been elusive to many, Tuck. Diedrich in. Diedrich, good to have you, man. Mr. Erickson all the way in from South Dakota. Jack is here. Grateful Red is in. NASCAR Eric. And as well as Eat Beef is in. Cliff in from Florida. 3 putts in along with Shane. Shane, good to have you. Drunk Monk, 5-1 Friday, GBR. And Jim is here along with Golden Fang. Johnny Boy, appreciate you coming in. Brian Christopherson's on the way with Hail Varsity Radio.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody is in. We say hi to Brian Christopherson with us from Husker 24/7 Sports. We'll get to some of your score predictions as well. The other Brian making his way in on the stream. And we have BC loaded up. I think we do. BC, good to spend a few minutes with you, man. How's your Friday? Thanks for joining us.
My Friday's pretty good. It's beautiful weather, big game ahead. What's to complain about, right?
Amen. Yeah, there's not much to complain. And, I'm interested here. Brian Christopherson, if he takes that time in the near future to go to a game with family versus go to the press box, he will or won't order a beer now that he'll be able to.
You know what? With family, probably not. My family isn't much of a drinking family, and I'm really honored I'm father and mother, so I probably wouldn't. I'd probably behave myself pretty well.
How about post-game beers in the press box? You with that?
It's a nice touch. Colorado used to do it. Notre Dame actually did it. There might have been one other. I think I've counted 3 or 4 that have thrown that little cherry on top for the press, and I can't say I've minded that.
So are you surprised it took this long to get BOR approval for alcohol at volleyball and football?
No, it always kind of seemed like it would be a little bit of a slower process around here. You know, Schmidt, you're old enough to remember when Nebraska was playing games at Colorado in the 90s and this stuff was unheard of. Like, remember, they would be throwing some beer bottles and stuff, and I remember Nebraska fans were like, how can they let that happen? Why is that in the stadium? So in my lifetime alone, a lot has changed where it's become a topic where most people are just in favor of, yeah, go ahead and do that. But I always thought it would be a little slower here compared to some other places, and it has been. I don't think, Coach Osborne is probably a big proponent of it when he was AD, and so it's taken a while probably since he left that post for some things to go through. But anyway, it feels like this is just the way of the world now, and it's in about every college stadium, or will be within the next year or two, I have a feeling.
BC, let's get into Rutgers, Nebraska, and your outlook on this thing tomorrow. Is it the next critical game in 2024, or is it the critical game in 2024?
It's both. It's the critical game because it is the next game. That sounds like coach speak, but I think it's really true for this team right now. I thought last week was a challenging week for them to overcome because I think it was really demoralizing when they lost that game to Illinois. And Matt Rule basically said as much in the post game after Purdue, so that they were able to kind of fight through that, get that win in their pocket, and now you're kind of have some distance from that Illinois game, and hopefully you took some lessons from it. I think is pretty good for this team because I think tomorrow's game could be similar in some respects to the one we saw 2 weeks ago. And I don't say that in a bad way. I feel like Nebraska had like 7 or 8 plays or opportunities where they definitely could have tilted that game in their favor, and now you just got to go out and make them tomorrow.
It's Brian Christopherson with us here on Hail Varsity Radio as we start talking some Nebraska-Rutgers. And BC, one of the things I mentioned yesterday was the feel after this game I think will determine what November might look like for you as a Husker football team. Like, if it's a win tomorrow, you think they're fighting for some relevancy nationally in the Big Ten in the month of November. You're trying to fight for maybe 8 wins, whereas if you lose tomorrow, it feels like November is going to be a month of fighting for 6, fighting for just bowl eligibility. Do you think that's fair?
There's a bit of that feeling, yeah. It's sort of a category-shifting game, I think, in some respects. Part of it is the difficult schedule ahead. You know, Indiana obviously looks a lot tougher than anybody thought they were in August. It's not like it's a game Nebraska can't go get, but it's going to be a real tough game. So I just think this is big because, you know, you've got a bye week coming up. There's going to be a long time to kind of sit on this one, whether it's good emotions or bad emotions. And it's sometimes hard, I think, within the program to keep whatever is the thinking outside the walls from infiltrating inside your building. And so this is one of those games where it would do them a big favor to have sort of those positive vibes on the outside, whereas, as you say, people are talking more about those 8 or 9 wins or what that can look like, as opposed to, oh boy, are they on the fence to make a bowl again, which I don't know that this team would think that way, but the outside perspective certainly might be that if they lose tomorrow.
Brian Christopherson's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, BC with Husker 24/7 Sports. And the topic and issue of pressure, right, has been a talking point this season. How's Nebraska handle pressure in tight ball games? Matt Rule mentioned it in his post game with the Purdue win, and was really pumping his team up. And he does a great job of knowing the heartbeat / pulse of this football team, the confidence or lack of confidence. He knows when to holler at them, but he also knows when they need, that proverbial hug. And he keeps encouraging and motivating, which is wonderful. But if it doesn't go the right way for Nebraska fans or the team tomorrow, that pressure mounts back up, and you've been through it once before, right? You went through it last November just needing 1. But it felt like things shifted from, 6 is nice, just get to a bowl game, to, all right, Colorado happened, and you didn't play that great in the second half. It seems like things expanded, BC, where the mark or bar for success after the Colorado game grew quite a bit, and then now you're just wondering. It feels like it's a week-to-week thing, and it is for this football team. Their confidence and, truly, what are they? What are they, a 7-win team that's middle of the pack in the Big Ten? Are they beyond that if they get by Rutgers? I mean, that's kind of the narrative right now. Folks are trying to figure out.
The thing Husker fans can take heart in, that's college football in 2024 most everywhere except for like 5 or 6 programs, right? I mean, there's those juggernauts right now, and then there's teams 6 through 45 who you put in a blender, and on a given day, if the team who's like you think is 43rd makes 3 more plays than the team who's 15th, they might end up on top. So you got to just understand there's that margin for error. This is becoming more like the NFL with every passing year. And that's where you just have to have a tough mentality. You have to have that belief in yourself. And I think that's what Rule was trying to build after that Purdue game, is like, hey, this actually was a close game, guys. And I know you've heard that narrative that you can't perform in these situations, but you were in a bit of a pickle here, and you got through it, and you pulled it off, and you ran away with that game. Take that and use that. So I think that's some good coaching to use something like that in your favor. But it's just going to be a deal where everybody's got to do their 111, and they've just got to do their job really well. And they have to know that if you leave a couple plays open for the other side in this league, they're going to take advantage of it. So there's a lot on the line tomorrow. There's no question about it, but it's going to be that way across college football. This is that point in the season where programs sort of tip it one way or the other, and Nebraska really has an opportunity tomorrow, and that's how they have to look at it, as an opportunity, not so much like, oh, no, what if this happens, but a chance to be 5-1, going to the bye, like a lot of people probably would have about had them, and then everything's on the table for you after that.
Brian, two-part question here. Nebraska wins tomorrow if ... Rutgers wins tomorrow if ...
Rutgers wins tomorrow if it's playing 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 6, like 2/3 of the time, as opposed to like 2nd and 8 or 9. I really feel like first down for Nebraska's defense is going to set up everything. Like if Nebraska can win on that down and they can keep a very talented back from falling forward and getting 2-3 extra yards, much easier said than done, but that's the challenge. You've got to get them down quick, and you've got to somehow keep Rutgers out of its comfort zone of living in like 3rd and 3 land all game long, where they've converted 51% of their third downs, and keeping the ball away from Ryle and all that stuff. So I think Rutgers wins if they're having first down success, which I would equate to like 4 or 5 yards. If they're doing that, it's going to be a tough game. Doesn't mean Nebraska can't win it, but it's going to go down to the wire. Nebraska, on the other hand, I think as much as we talk about all these other things and Rutgers' run game, I think this is a game where Nebraska's run game has to meet the moment against a defense in Rutgers that is giving up like 5.8 or 5.9 per carry. They have been dented a little bit. And so I'd love to see that combination of Dowdell and maybe a little bit of Emmett Johnson earlier than we saw him last week really get going and give that assist to Dylan Ryle in the passing game. Maybe you need a few passes from Ryle to open things up a little bit and loosen up that defense for the run, but I'd like to see it take hold much earlier than it did a week ago. And I think if Nebraska does that and can get sort of on top of that by the second quarter, I think they win the game.
Brian Christopherson's with us. Follow him on Twitter at Husker247BC. And read him and Brunsey and Schaaf with Husker247. About 30 seconds, BC. What's a TFL number the Black Shirts need tomorrow?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I don't know what the exact number is, but I feel like going back to the point I made about first downs and winning on first downs, they just need to give themselves a chance on third down where I think they can really own the game if it's like 3rd and 7 or longer, like 4 or 5 times in this game, where Rutgers has to live in a place where they just don't feel comfortable there. And so they only had 2 TFLs, I think, against Illinois. This has to be a game where, you have 7 or 8, I don't know how many, but you get enough that you have a chance to try to get pressure, sack the quarterback, and knock a football loose. I'd love to see him knock the ball loose once or twice in this game, and I know they're emphasizing that, and that could be a big deal and be the decider in a game like this.
BC will check in again, bud. Appreciate you much. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, I always enjoy being on, guys. Thank you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Varsity, we're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice driving the bus today. As we'll take some phone calls, also get back to your predictions. 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Like and subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Drunk Uncle says podcast is hard to find. apparently were harder to find than Coach Prime. So,
well, if you're drunk, I could
just type in Husker Podcast, I guess, or just Hail Varsity. You should be okay.
Yeah, Hail Varsity Radio. Make sure you type in the 3. Hail Varsity can screw it up. Hail Varsity Radio, 3 words. Wherever you find podcasts, you can also just Google it, and you should be able to find some places to find the podcast as well. Or we'll make it easy for you. The Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed, now X, I guess, formerly Twitter, now X. We live stream the show there every single day. Give that a follow, and you should see it in your timeline every single day. So that's an easy place to find it.
Big time. Cliff is checked in. Tim is in. Says, buckle up for Rutgers. Walter from Philly wants the word close eliminated from our discussion or just being used. I get it, but I'm excited about tomorrow and just, what are you? It's kind of a street cred / credit report ball game for me. Nebraska's credit score. All right. Did you go on a little spending spree and not pay the man? That's Illinois, right? Do you figure it out with this second opportunity? Do you, if you're Rutgers, keep this narrative of a 10-2, 11-1 season because you don't have any big dogs that you're dealing with? Excuse me. So, and I think Rutgers is, a solid 8-win football team based on their schedule. But one of those better not come into Lincoln. I mean, you just kind of you get to the woes me part of the football fandom. And again, I'm not judging. I'm saying you want it to be different as you get into October.
And it's something we kind of talked about yesterday with Vogel, that good football teams don't lose twice as greater than touchdown favorites at home in one season. And I understand, hey, maybe you needed a little bit more context with the Illinois game. There's been enough context on this season now that Vegas has a pretty good idea with their lines. They're pretty good at this point in the season. You don't get many bad lines. So, with that in mind, if you lose again at home as a 7-point favorite, warning bells are going off for me about how good this team actually is, because if you can't beat Rutgers as a, again, touchdown favorite at home, I have serious concerns about your ability to beat Indiana on the road, to go into Ohio State and even be competitive. USC, Iowa, there's so many games on the schedule that if you can't beat Rutgers as a 7-point home favorite, you're just not going to win this season. I understand teams change throughout the season and you get better, but the warning bell should start going off once you get to your second loss as a touchdown favorite at home. I don't want to put that out there, but if that is what happens tomorrow, there is serious concerns about this team, and for me, their ability to go out there. You're fighting an uphill battle. You would need UCLA and you would need Wisconsin. Those would be the 2 wins that would get you to bowl eligibility and maybe get lucky in one of the other games. But I think there's 4 more teams that you have on the schedule in Indiana, Ohio State, USC, and Iowa that are all better than this Rutgers football team. So if you can't beat Rutgers at home, it's an uphill battle to get to 6. You really just lose all your margin for error just to get to 6.
It goes into when the games you're supposed to win, right? And you're supposed to win. You're supposed to win this one as a favorite. You're supposed to beat Illinois. Who's on the line?
Oh, we have Pete on the line.
Pete, welcome in. Go for it, man.
How you doing today?
We're okay.
I'm going to give you my opinion of the Keys game tomorrow. I think on defense, the defensive line needs to control the line of scrimmage. I think they need to either maintain the line of scrimmage or get a little penetration. If they get knocked back 2 or 3 yards off the line, it could be a long day on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. On the offensive side, I think Fedoni is kind of the key to this game. He's a devastating blocker. I would run behind on his side. And he's a mismatch for a defense, and especially Rutgers defense, I think. So I think Fedoni is critical on offense to get the ball to him, run behind him. And I think on defense, the line of scrimmage is going to be the key.
I think you nail it with the defensive side of things.
You killed that. Appreciate it, Pete. You coming down tomorrow?
No. Won't be able to make tomorrow's game.
Well, you just kind of laid out. Pete, appreciate the phone call, 489-1240. What needs to happen? Juan says, does Elijah not know that Nebraska is way better as underdogs? It's easier to go in that way versus the favorite.
Well, now we're getting back.
Sure.
Now we're getting back to a discussion that we had pre-Illinois game, which raised a lot of doubts. Is this a new Nebraska? The old Nebraska plays better as an underdog, but good teams in college football are going to be favorites a lot, and they got to go take care of business. So the test, is this a new Nebraska team this year? Because, a Scott Frost-led team, we saw it enough, would have found a way to lose this game. Nebraska last year would have found a way to lose this game at home. That's what it is. Is this a new Nebraska team with the new quarterback that you have? That's what's determined. Can you play well as a favorite?
Can you get out of your own way? And can you, very simply, let's go make some plays? Can you get out of your own head? Two questions that need answered for this football season. Because from a talent standpoint, Elijah, they're right there in that upper mid-tier. You and I both like this roster. And we like the old guys that are on this roster. But the baggage is the baggage, man. And that baggage gets heavier every time they don't do one of these things, i.e. win as a favorite at home. And they are. I mean, and they are, for lack of a better term, scared to screw up.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. You want it to just kind of be flushed and just go play ball tomorrow.
Dear God, if this game goes to overtime, they need beer and alcohol in Memorial Stadium ASAP.
People are going to be wandering through traffic on O Street. Who's on the line?
We have Roger on the line.
Raj, thanks for calling. Go for it. Oh, Roger didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to hear it anymore.
Well, Roger, if you're still out there, give us a call back. We got about 90 seconds left here this segment, so we'll try to squeeze you in.
489-1240.
I think he's calling back.
Bill Doleman thanks in 15 minutes. So, Real Matthews throwing some strays at Satterfield. Sad's done a hell of a job this year.
Yeah, I don't think the problem hasn't been Satterfield this year.
No.
The one thing I said, which I said after the Illinois game, I think after Purdue as well, is my one complaint is he's been a little predictable offensively, but he even hit on that this week at his presser, talking about, hey, from an offensive creativity standpoint, maybe we need to run a little bit more whenever people think we're going to pass more than we think we're going to run. But that's my one critique of him this year.
All right.
We go back to the phone lines here quickly. Who do we have, Justice?
Still Roger.
Roger, go for it, bud. Thanks.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I hear people talking always about the Illinois game and losing that. If we had a kicker, we would have won that game. But we don't have anybody that can kick the ball through the uprights.
Roger, they need to not get whacked for 6 a carry on first down. That's my bigger problem.
Yeah. I just wish that we had somebody that can get it through the uprights.
You and the rest of Nebraska.
Maybe that day's tomorrow, Roger. Appreciate you calling back.
Hey, all right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, 489-1240. Eric has a comment we'll get to. Bill Doleman on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this first hour. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Justice Rhody is in as we get you through a Friday into hour 2. Bill Doleman, Jacob Padilla. He's imaginary. He wears red. It is Clausborne with the Friday forecast. Picks sure to go wrong. We'll have that Nebraska-Rutgers prediction as well. So Songster chimed in a little bit back on the stream, and we invite you to check things out. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, and do it that way. MB Husker 13 says Nebraska needs to jump out to a lead and keep them out of their game plan. Love that idea. Pete nailed it with what the defensive line needs to do. And Raj just chimed in on the phone line, 489-1240, when it comes to Nebraska and getting a kicker. Eric says, why hasn't the Nebraska wide receivers versus Rutgers DBs been talked about? Hey, that's fair. What'd you have up there, Elijah? Sorry, I missed that. So Dustin says, I swear if I have to listen to one more Doomsday fan going on and on under the assumption that Nebraska is going to miss every kick, every game this season, I'm going to snap. #touch grass.
I don't necessarily disagree with those fans. I'll say that. Do I think Nebraska is going to miss every kick in every single game this season? No, probably not. But also, based on what you've seen this year, if you as a Husker fan are going to assume it's going to miss until you get surprised when it goes through the uprights, I'm not going to blame you. Because I think Matt Rule's probably in a similar place, too, in terms of in-game confidence. Like, the confidence isn't there that the kicks are going to go through until you see him start going through. So until you start seeing him going through, I don't blame you for sitting there thinking it's not going to go through. You got to see it first.
You need to see it go through the pipes in practice. You need to see it go through the pipe, more importantly, in game. And you've hit one field goal. You shanked Schmidt-style drive off the tee box against Illinois. And then 2 of your 3 were blocked because, well, the snap was garbage. I mean, it was a 14 hopper that Jeter couldn't have handled at shortstop. So the 3-3-5 against a run-first team. It worked a year ago.
Well, can we go back? The question being from Songster, what's your honest opinion on the 3-3-5 against the run-first team?
I think it's fine. I think this defense is fine.
I know defenses evolve, but the defense was initially created to stop run-first teams. And I know defense has changed and whatnot, offense has changed, but this was a defense that was designed essentially to stop USC's pro-style run-first attack of the early 90s. That's what this defense was centered around. That's how it was created. That's what it was for. I'm not going to sit here and say that one defense is going to be screwed over by... If you are running a defense that can't stop the run, that's not a defense. No one would run it.
It's a personnel problem.
There it is.
Or an attitude thing.
Well, you have to have the personnel to go execute your defense. It's not a 3-3-5 thing that can't stop the defense. If you can't stop the run with your 3-3-5, it means you don't have the personnel in your 3-3-5 to stop the run.
And they do have the personnel. They've got a really good interior. Nebraska's problem is that right, wrong, and different. A year ago, they opened up with some heavies, i.e. Minnesota, right? You opened up with Minnesota. Mike says I need to go breathe on Rutgers.
Just give him a little cough.
But Nebraska opened up with some spread finesse teams, and people have done their homework on this crew. Year 2 in the Tony White era. Bill Doleman's on the way. Hour 2 with Hail Varsity.
He's the pride of Fairbury, an average Joe. Bill Doleman, the professor.
I had a 6 ACT in 1967. One time I got an A and my grandma beat me for cheating.
Now with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Justice is driving the cargo ship. We say hi to Bill Doleman, pride of Fairbury, the professor, at Bill Doleman on Twitter. You hear him for the Average Joe Sports Show podcast, along with a couple other dudes on your screen if you're watching on the Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Hey, Billy D, how we doing? How we feeling on Friday? Do you have your toga ready?
Oh, yeah. So we're at the Theta Xi House. It's been hanging there since 1984 through 1989. Special place right there in the coat closet. It has not moved ever since then. Look, we're not on the air right now, so just real quick between us, where do you get your board ops?
That's funny. A well-trusted source.
Right.
So the Bill Doleman toga hangs in the rafters at the Theta Xi House, much like Ndamukong Suh jersey number is hanging.
Well, Bill, like
in the rafters.
You watch NFL games, NBA games, they do the jersey swap. Did you guys do the toga swap after a real good party? Like after a real good frosh, did you do the little toga swap?
I don't think you want somebody else's toga at the end of a driftwood party or something that may have transpired back in the day that is no longer allowed on the campuses of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. But damn, we had fun when we had a chance to do that. But yeah, you really didn't want any part of anybody else's toga or college sweatshirt.
Yeah, you don't do it. Arizona Husker chipping in $5. Thank you, AZ Husker. So we'll dive into it, but Bill Doleman's reaction to the Board of Regents saying, "Beer me."
Yeah, it's pretty much welcome to the 21st century of collegiate athletics. And, the decade of the 2020s and beyond. I like to think of this as Nebraska's implementing an NIL tax, to be honest with you. It might also be going to, I don't know, maybe Nebraska might decide, doggone it, it's too bad that the roster limitation is at 105 players. And there sure is a lot of guys on this campus that would love to continue to play football while they still can. How about we just create a club team, and they'll have an opportunity to practice at, by Memorial Stadium. And we have to have something for our expanding coaching staff, which is unlimited in its roster size. So maybe some of those quality control coaches or analysts or graduate assistants will be able to get some valuable experience in coaching a club team that, lo and behold, might there be an injury or kicking problems and some guy just happened to be on campus, and all of a sudden this club team becomes the feeder for the varsity team on campus. I'm just saying somebody's going to find a loophole to 105 roster size. Not that 105 roster size isn't significant, but wouldn't that be a fine way to fund a few extra football players on campus just in case you might need them? There you go.
Work out.
For all of you college football programs trying to figure out how you're going to manage a roster of 105 and maintain the walk-on programs, just give me a call. I've been on this since 2001. So club football will probably make its way onto campuses so that there is a taxi squad feeder system for the varsity teams, and the cornhead lager tax, whatever it's going to be, maybe that'll go to fund that.
Well, yeah, we talk about college football moving closer and closer to an NFL model, Bill. And what does the NFL have? They have a practice squad of guys that aren't eligible to go play on Sundays, but they can go practice all week long. A system like that, and you obviously wouldn't be able to have them be an actual practice squad that goes against the varsity team, your actual starters, because of the rule with 105. But yeah, I'm with you, and that's going to be coming to college football, because if there's a rule, Bill, there's a loophole.
Somebody's going to figure out how to manipulate around it. But look, whatever Nebraska is going to do in terms of sales at Memorial Stadium, and at Devaney's going to sell, right? Is that part of it, or they're already doing that?
No,
basketball's already doing it. Look, if you're going to want to partake, though, you need to understand you are going to be in some long ass lines, and you're going to miss a whole lot of live football. You're going to be watching Nebraska games at Memorial Stadium from the concourse. If you really want your beer that bad, and you got to make frequent trips to the tap to get it, you're going to spend a lot more time on the concourse than you are actually watching the game from your seat. But I have a hard time believing that. Maybe they will. I don't know. I maybe they will sell, up and down the aisles with those 21 and over. But I would think that most of that is going to be concourse sales, and they're going to try to make sure that people don't overdo it. But look, everybody is. It's just the way of the world. Sooner or later, we'll probably have, FanDuel kiosks at maybe not in the stadium, but close by. I'm pretty sure that we're not going to have the night before North, Schmidt, at Memorial Stadium.
Someone already beat, you're thinking I want, win one for the stripper. You hit that sign. No, I don't need that with my football. I'm happy. Right?
Yeah, I told you about a friend of mine that got recruited by Miami pretty heavily, and when he got to Miami, he wanted to go to campus and meet with some professors and see where he would be going to classes and whatnot. And they said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that." He went on a recruiting visit to Miami and never saw the campus.
And he saw Cinnamon center stage. No, I get it. Bill, to Rutgers in Nebraska we go, and pretty critical ball game tomorrow for this team's psyche, but honestly, kind of a chance to, get a credit report as you go in with that momentum. We've talked a lot about momentum for this team this year. You started out with all these home games. You've done your job on the road against a bad football team, despite it being scoreless at half. And now you kind of get a mulligan off the tee box with what you did against Illinois. Could have won it. But Rule's not wrong when he talked about you would have dropped one along the way. You got to learn from it. Do they learn from it tomorrow?
Look, it's not as though when Nebraska lost to Illinois, it was how they got smoked by Michigan a year ago. And I think people
look different.
I think people are looking back to that Illinois game because Nebraska lost a close game again, that it was, 45-7, and it took a late touchdown to prevent a shutout. I said many times on this and on the Average Joe Sports Show, Sunday mornings at 10:30, that Nebraska's a yard away from being unbeaten. If Raiola connects with Lindenmeyer, that's a touchdown. That's a win. If Hull makes his field goal just a yard to the right, Nebraska wins in regulation. Or you could go back to, even plays earlier in the game and penalties that were not called in the first quarter. The interception was somewhat controversial in the end zone. Look, Nebraska lost a hard-fought game and made some bad, had some bad breaks and made some mistakes, and they lost a close game. So I think we're losing perspective on, how competitive they were in that game against what's probably a fairly decent Illinois team. They battled Penn State into the fourth quarter on the road at Happy Valley last week. Now Rutgers is coming in, and I like Rutgers in this sense, like I like Illinois. They've got a coach who understands the Big Ten, coaches that way. The foundation is in place. Greg Schiano in his second stint at Wise Guys U, and they understand what their culture is, the kind of football they're going to play. It's their identity, and he's perfect for that job. Just like Bielema, I think is great for the Illinois gig. So you've got two very good Big Ten coaches whose programs are established. And Nebraska just has to beat that. And you look at what Rutgers has faced this year, Akron, Howard, a not very good Virginia Tech team who got screwed at Miami and not in and they beat a Washington team that gained over 500 yards of total offense, missed some field goals, threw the ball for over 300 yards. And they got a win at home. So it's not as though Rutgers has really been, gone through the gauntlet and they happen to knock off Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama in its first 4 games of the season. Their schedule, you could probably say, has been weaker than what Nebraska's faced.
And that's kind of where I'm at, Bill, in that we talked about it last hour. We talked about it yesterday. I think the concern of Nebraska's ability to even get to 6 starts ramping up if you can't get past Rutgers, because I think there's plenty of teams left on your schedule that are better than Rutgers. Like, we've seen enough this season to have context on teams' performances, and yeah, Rutgers is undefeated, but the undefeated record doesn't tell the full story. Whenever you look at them, I think there's other teams in the schedule, probably 4 of them, that are better than this Rutgers team.
I agree with you, but you can't drop a second one. A team that you're favored to beat at home.
I think Nebraska, if Matt Rule is the coach that we believe him to be, and the organization that he's put in place, that there's probably been a whole lot of learning going on the last couple of weeks. How did you learn? What did you learn from the Illinois game? Right, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, and you got beat at home. It's what did you learn in the Purdue game? 0-0 at halftime. You come back and score 28 points in the second half, and you have a relatively easy win. So there was some learning going on right there. And now you come back and you apply it. Now, you mentioned a mulligan. I think if you're going to have a mulligan from the Illinois game to the Rutgers game now, who's on the tee box for you to hit it? To me, it's Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, and Jamari Butler.
I'm going John Daly.
Healthy. What's that?
I'm going John Daly.
Yeah. Okay. So you got a little vodka on there with you. But those 3 guys, I think, did not have great games against Illinois. There was a lot of yards after contact, a lot of straight up the middle gains of 3 at the point of attack, and then 3 more, 5 more, 6 more. And that was evident in the fourth quarter. I think if Ty Robinson, Hutmaker, Butler, and others, once they make that contact at the line of scrimmage, that a 3-yard gain is not 6, it's 3. You wrap them up and you make the plays along the line, or you wrap them up and you allow linebackers to come in and plug those holes. Nebraska can't rely on John Bullock to be the playmaker on defense like he was against Illinois, and it wasn't enough. To me, it's Robinson, Butler, and Hutmaker. Those guys along the front. Cam Lenhart, I'll throw him in there as well. They need to not allow Rutgers yards after contact.
So then I wanted to ask you this, Bill. Bill Doleman joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. When you talk about the defensive line and make an impact, the weather tomorrow is supposed to be 93, 94 degrees. The field temp's going to be over 100 degrees. For Kyle Monungai and Samuel Brown V, the running backs that mainly get the carries for Rutgers, do you think that they'll see more than 20 carries apiece with the temperatures and having to hit into that defensive line and the physicality that Nebraska can present at any given time?
That is a very well thought out and educated question. You are getting a solid education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Oh, man. I think they're going to have to rely on Kaliakmanis. They're going to have to put the ball in the air. If they're just going to load up with two running backs and they're going to run the ball 40 times, eventually they're going to stuff them. I think Illinois with Altmaier provided a bit of a blueprint that you got to put the ball in the air. I don't think they have receivers like Illinois did with Franklin and Bryant. So that's probably concerning for Rutgers, and maybe they're just going to say, look, this is our best chance, and we do have to rotate these guys in, and we're going to have to carry the ball 40 times. I just don't see that, though, especially on a hot day like that, and they're going to be on the hot side of the field. Nebraska made a nice move to enjoy the shade. It might be 20 or 30 degrees difference. So it could be a draining afternoon for Rutgers tomorrow afternoon, and they're going to have to rely on that quarterback to make some plays for them. He's beaten Nebraska twice. I don't think they're going to take the ball out of his hands. So I would think that they're probably going to put it in the air 20 to 30 times tomorrow. But maybe they don't do that either. Maybe they don't have confidence in their passing game, and they're just going to say, all right, just try and stop the run, and if you can, you're going to win.
Well, it's a game tomorrow with the weather. It's been described to me, shout out my Uncle John giving me this one, it's convection oven weather, 90 degrees plus with 25 mile an hour plus winds. That's convection oven weather right there.
Well, that could affect the kicking game. And so maybe Nebraska, instead of having to figure out what they're going to do in the kicking game, they're just going to go for it anyway, right?
Just go.
Yeah, let's look. It's 4th down and 7. Let's just go for it. Buschini, though, has proven he's a pretty solid punter into or with the wind. So I think there is an advantage that Nebraska has in Buschini as long as he kicks with his coverage, right? We don't need him kicking away from coverage so we can pad his tackle stats any longer. Those days have to be over.
Bill, I need a prediction, and we'll probably rope you in digitally for a little Real Red Reaction Bill Doleman breakdown. Tomorrow about 6 or so. What's the score going to be?
Well, given your condition today, I think Nebraska matches your fever temperature of 101.2, which is, what is that, about 3 above normal temperature, so 101 to 3. There you go. Yeah.
Bill with the overs and the cover.
I tell you, I think 7 is high, but I think maybe it might be appropriate tomorrow.
Okay. Bill Doleman with the over and lay to 7, says Bill Doleman. Totally put words in your mouth there. Pride of Fairbury. It's Bill Doleman, @BillDoleman on Twitter. Billy D, we love you, brother. Thanks. We'll holler tomorrow.
All right, boys. See you later. Solid C+ today.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Our friends from the Big Red Junkies check in on the Stream Hail Varsity YouTube. It's where you can like and subscribe and watch the show. They say, hey, what's up? Statement game tomorrow for the Big Red. They say 35-17. All right. Some confidence there. KG says, look, I'm getting drunk tomorrow at the stadium. I don't need to wait till next year. KG, that was pretty funny. I like that. Let's talk some ball, some football, some high school ball, some volleyball, some basketball, as he was at Big Ten Basketball Media Days. Jacob Padilla with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at Jacob Padilla _ It's where you follow him. Jacob, where are you off to tonight, man?
I am heading to Malcolm to see Husker commit Connor Booth and Bishop Newman play against the Clippers.
That'll be big time. That's a good spot. That's really a good spot. How's your week been? How is the travel? How's Big Red Hoops looking before we get into some football?
Yeah, pretty good. I let Sauter take care of all the travel there, so I was just a passenger. Got some work done in the passenger seat, so didn't have to worry too much about that. He took care of that. I was just there to kind of supervise and tag along.
Well, that's good. Big Ten's going to be a little bit thicker, a little deeper this year with the additions. What do you believe about this squad as they kind of start out on the outside looking in? And also a thought on Creighton. You know, are they ready to make another run?
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska picked 12th in the unofficial preseason media poll from the Columbus Dispatch, tied for 12th, actually, with Wisconsin. After finishing third last year and getting the 3 seed. So, I mean, that's understandable. You look at the teams that they added, you look at the influx of talent between the transfer portal and some of the 5-star signees at a place like Rutgers. And it's going to be tough this year in the league. Like, there aren't going to be many easy wins anywhere in the conference, I don't think. I mean, with an 18-team league now, like 12th place finish, normally that would be all that's near the bottom. Like, that's kind of mid-pack right now. And it's certainly possible, like, that Nebraska ends up in that area. I think there'd be some wins here and there that kind of swing it between 5th, 6th, 7th, and 10th, 11th, 12th. Like, I don't think there's going to be that much separation. But Nebraska's going to have to see kind of how all the pieces come together. And I mean, you look at it, Hoiberg said, kind of the most most versatile roster he's had between the size they added in the front court and then on the wings, even at the point guard spot. Rolly Worcester's a really good sized point guard as well. So they like the pieces. They added a lot of guys that they're high on in terms of 3-point shooting with Gavin Griffith and Connor Esiason, and even Berke Bukdungel has been shooting the ball well for them, and they've been impressed with kind of the skill level that he's displayed. So there's a lot of pieces here. Nebraska's got some upside, but nothing's going to come easy in the Big Ten this year.
Jacob Padilla with us here. And Jacob, the Big Ten is one of the best basketball conferences, if not the best, on a year-in, year-out basis. People around here know that. People who follow Husker basketball know that. This is a team that, I mean, you're in a great conference, but it still feels like that 12th out of 18th, considering they were in the tournament last year, returning a lot of talent. Feels like they're flying under the radar a little bit, but you also get the feel that that's the way that they want it. I think this is a team that wants to fly under the radar coming into the season. Do you get that feel as well?
I mean, I think Juwan Gary said as much. I kind of actually just put up, you can go look at hailvarsity.com, put up a story talking with those guys there. And he said the word underdog like 5-6 times during his 25-minute segment over there, speaking with us up there in Rosemont. And he said Nebraska will always be an underdog, I'll always be an underdog, and that's the way I like it. So, yeah, I mean, Bryce Williams said he doesn't really pay attention to it. His family does. He's got people talking to him about it. They're like, hey, look at this or whatever. But I think they're going to use it for motivation like anybody does. But they're comfortable in this spot. They're happy to kind of be the ones that are chasing others despite kind of where they finished last year.
Jacob Padilla's with us, hailvarsity.com and Hurrdat at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. Good to go to football, Jacob, and Nebraska not underdogged tomorrow. Kind of a make-good opportunity for the Big Red against a team that's not quite ranked, but in that discussion point, what do you see? What do you like for Nebraska? What are you worried about for Nebraska tomorrow against Rutgers?
Yeah, I think it'll be another kind of valuable data point just to see, because we've seen this team look like the old team and where they shoot themselves in the foot and make things really difficult. And they've looked like the team that they want to be. In that second half against Purdue, obviously they took off and kind of figured things out and took control of that game after we saw all the old problems pop up against Illinois, and that really cost them down the stretch in that game. Obviously, the kicking situation is one, and that whole operation, the special teams as a whole. You ask about kind of what you're worried about. That'll always be I think the number one answer until they prove they've kind of come up with some solutions for it, and that impacts so much of the game with kind of the field field positioning aspect of things and what the impact that has on your offensive defense, and then just not having the comfort of feeling like, oh, we've got 3 points here at any point, no matter how far deep into the territory you get. But I think there's some things that they can feel confident about as well. Is kind of the continued evolution of the offense and figuring out ways to get all the various weapons involved. They've got a lot of guys that can cause damage there and kind of keep things balanced. And you've got a quarterback you can feel really good about. So we'll see if I think this will tell us, like, hey, is Nebraska moving forward, or are they kind of stuck in that same place we've seen where, yeah, there's talent there, but they continue to prevent themselves from living up their potential because of little mistakes here and there. And I think Rutgers is kind of a perfect opponent for that, to where, yeah, they're talented enough to beat you if you don't take care of business, but there's not really Nebraska is favored. It's not like it's a top 15 team or whatever where you need everything to go perfect to win, but you do have to come out and play a really solid game in order to earn this one.
Jacob, are you surprised Nebraska is as big of a favorite as they are? It's 7.5, depending on where you find it right now. It's a lot of points for Nebraska, especially based on what we saw against Illinois. Rutgers still undefeated. Does that number surprise you?
A little bit, and again, that amount of points when you can't rely on your kicking game. That game we've seen for Nebraska so far this season, games have been closer than they should have been, or again with that last game or whatever, like they should have had points. Should have a lot more points than they ended up scoring in that game. So that could, like, in terms of just getting down, like, yeah, you could win the game, but are you going to be able to win it by 10 or win it by multiple scores there, or are you going to have to hold on there? Like 7.5, that feels like quite a lot. But then again, there's some good, like Rutgers, Shiano's done a good job of that program, and they're certainly much better than they have been. But there's some cracks as well. And I think the small sample size with the metrics, maybe they make them look a little bit better than they are to this point. So we'll see kind of how it plays out on Saturday. But I understand a little bit, like Nebraska's, I think they're probably more talented than Rutgers is. So I think that's where that comes from. But you've got the kind of the question mark hanging over this program is like, can you live up to your talent?
Love that. I love that take, the living up to talent, because you look at this squad with the young guys and that young talent playing at a high level. But the old guard has been through a lot of the wars. They're the experience, right? Can they kind of get their mind right and just go perform? Jacob, you've got volleyball doing their thing, and they've been a whole different team since SMU. And what is your outlook? Who's in a loaded league? Who's closest to Nebraska right now? Is it Penn State? Is it Wisconsin? Is it the Washingtons? Who's a threat to Nebraska as they're really rolling right now?
Yeah, I mean, you can never count out Wisconsin. Minnesota's improved this year than they were a year ago. Purdue's always tough, but I think Penn State at this point is that team that you're looking at as the biggest threat. The question for Nebraska now is, I mean, the number one question right now is Andy Jackson's status. Cook didn't really get asked about that after the game on the radio, which is unfortunate considering it's a road game, and we didn't get the chance to ask him the question. But Andy Jackson missed the match against Illinois, and he mentioned something like, we found out she couldn't go, so it wasn't necessarily. That kind of indicates that maybe it isn't like, oh, she hurt herself really badly in practice at some point and so he knocked her out. But have no idea kind of what that situation is. So first you got to get that question answered. All right, what is Andy Jackson's status? And then I think you're continuing to see, for as much of a role as they're on right now, there's still a lot of room for improvement, I think, in terms of their overall play. It seems like you're kind of figuring out still what you're doing on that pin. We saw Taylor Landfair start against Illinois, and then Lindsey Krause came on for her in the third set. Cook mentioned he thought Taylor was kind of getting worn down a little bit by the end. She was effective early on, but then her swings in the third set didn't really produce much. So I don't know. That seems like something that we may see some back and forth between that all season, because, I mean, he has no bad options at this point. That's the nice thing, is no matter who you put in there, it's probably going to turn out all right. But Landfair and Krause have both shown to have incredibly high ceilings. And we know how much work that Krause has put in the program. She's been there from the start, whereas Landfair is kind of new and working her way in and trying to kind of learn what it takes to play for John Cook and what he likes to see from his players. But we also know, like, how much of a difference maker she can be from an attacking standpoint. And Krause, we've seen step up in some really big matches, but hasn't maybe been attacked. And she's been their best server so far this season, but maybe hasn't been as consistent attacking as you'd like to see out of that spot. So they still have some questions. There's still some areas where they can improve, but kind of no matter who they put out there at this point, since that SMU game, they've really just managed to figure it out and go out and win quite decisively.
Pretty impressive. Good stuff from Jacob Padilla. Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports, hoops, volleyball, football. He's got it all handled at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter. Jacob, have a great weekend. Have a good time at the ball game tonight. We'll do this again soon. Appreciate you.
All right. Good to talk to you guys again. Thanks.
All right. There he is. Good to hear from Jacob. We'll get to the Friday forecast. Ace has some numbers from the desert. Clausborne on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Just some programming notes for tomorrow. So noon to 2, the weekend edition, will take you into Rutgers. There is a Rutgers takeover at the Graduate and Single Barrel. So we will be on locally, KFOR, 101.5 and 1240, radio, YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, for noon to 2. For the pregame, afterwards, Real Red Reaction, myself and Elijah will rock and roll it. Do we want to say 6:30-ish tomorrow?
Yeah, 6:30-ish.
6:30-ish. It'll be a hard start, probably 12:05-ish. For tomorrow. So Elijah's getting into the press box tomorrow, which will be cool. That'll be good. All right. Do we have Claus? All right. Do we need to tell Justice about the
there's a bed up there on the hot buttons. You should see it's yellow.
He's staring at it. Claus, how we doing today?
Well, I'm doing just fine, Christopher. Of course, happy to be back on the program. And I want to remind all of you that the rules said there would be no fact-checking. So I expect this to go just as well as things did the other night on CBS.
Well, we're going to pit, the former president against Claus down the road here as we dive into October for the forecast.
We have big things planned.
I am truly not afraid unless the competition is between the tapes of what he did in Russia and what Darlington and I did in Juarez.
Oh, wow. Next time I see Uncle George, he's going to smack me, but that's okay. Let's get into the Friday forecast. We're going to make our picks here. Missouri is at A&M -2.5. A&M's a tough place to play, tough place to win. That number's too low. Like if A&M was a threat to defend home field, i.e. the Notre Dame game, it'd be a lot larger. I like Missouri outright on the road. 31-21. Give me Missouri. Elijah, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't like going against Coach Barney because he tends to be right, and he told us Mizzou this week. That being said, I'm going to go against my better judgment. The 12th man at Kyle Field is real. As much as I don't like those Yale leaders, it's a tough place to go play. So give me A&M to win this, even though they're not the better team. 28-24, Aggies on top of the Tigers.
Justice, do you have a pick?
I actually do. Kyle Field is a fraudulent home field environment. I don't believe in the 12th man. I don't believe in what they say. A&M doesn't have Luther Burden III on the outside. Give me the Tigers by 3, 30-27 on the road.
Okay, the cover. Claus, what are we doing here? Gig 'em or roar?
First of all, good Lord, when did Barry White change his name to Justice and start producing radio programs? My Lord.
We have a pipeline from Connor to Justice of just people who have better voices than us.
Pipe being the operative word.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Now, I read earlier today that former Texas A&M coach Jimbo Fisher has come out and said there's rampant cheating and tampering in college football and that NIL has made it worse. And I thought, by God, the hypocrisy, that'd be like O.J. suddenly coming out saying he's concerned about waiter safety.
My Lord.
May he rest in peace.
R.I.P. in peace, but I think Mike Elko is going to take advantage of the cheating, tampering, and NIL done by his predecessor, and they're going to win this game 31 and Missouri 28.
Iowa.
That is
Ohio State.
Can I say that is one hell of a way to welcome Justice to his first ever Friday forecast. Good on you, Claus.
Missouri. I love it. Iowa at Ohio State. Buckeyes minus 18.5. Ohio State's been a slow starter. They're loaded. They're talented. They're great. They can run it. They can defend it. They can throw it. I like Iowa to cover. I think it's about a 17-point ball game. That's not 18.5. And give me Ohio State 35. Iowa, 18. Just for brutal math. 6 field goals. I don't know. Iowa covers. Ohio State wins. Elijah.
I hate that pick. How many times do you have to see Iowa get beat up by an actual elite football team before you believe? I mean, their defense isn't fraudulent. It's a good defense. But whenever it goes up against a real offense like it's had in Michigan and Ohio State and others throughout the past couple years, it gets ugly. I think this one gets ugly. Even if Ohio State's offense has an off day, I still think they put up a lot of points. Ohio State 35, Iowa 10, comfortable win and cover for the Buckeyes.
Justice.
Yeah, I don't think this is an off day at all for Ohio State. I think they look at the Hawkeye and they see a big flashing target. I love Jeremiah Smith to go for 2 touchdowns in this one. I love that two-headed monster of Henderson and Judkins to go crazy. Give me the Buckeyes, 49-21.
You guys forget they're at Oregon next week. Look ahead. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Claus, what are we saying here? Iowa, Ohio State.
You know, I've been thinking this week, and Iowa's been on my mind, but of course, you know, everyone's giving old Tim Walz a hard time because sure, he wasn't at Tiananmen Square, and sure, he wasn't Master Chief on Halo or whatever. But then you got the Iowa Hawkeyes who claimed 5 national championships, apparently awarded by polls that were voted on by the entire staff of the Des Moines Register and a couple of pig farmers in Ankeny, and no one says a word to them about it. And I don't mean that to get political. I want to assure all your readers I'm not endorsing Tim Walz, but it is an extra dig on Hawkeye fans because what could be worse than your entire program being compared to a Nebraska native who now runs Minnesota? I'm taking Ohio State 35 and Iowa 2.
Okay, 35-2. Let's move it along. Michigan at Washington. Michigan survived the Fighting Flex. Washington favored at home by a -1.5. I think the Washington Huskies take out some anger and rage after leaving 20 points on the field at Piscataway. Give me Washington 24. Give me Michigan 20. Outright win for the Huskies. Elijah.
My gut tells me Washington, but there's too much in my head that tells me Michigan. You have to have a great run defense to stop the Wolverines. Washington's given up over 120 yards on the ground per game this year. I think Michigan wins in a tight one. Give me 24-20 Wolverines on top.
Justice?
I agree with Elijah. My gut says that Michigan rolls in. The ground game is a little bit too much for the Huskies. Give me Michigan 24-21 on the road.
Claus, we've got about a minute, and then we'll carry it
30
over.
seconds. 30 seconds.
30 seconds, Claus. Washington or Michigan?
Well, I know that people are just going to use this as fodder to say Nebraskans are still living in the 90s, but I'm just now catching up to the great television programs of that era. And when I think Seattle, Washington, I think Frazier. When I think Michigan, I think Tim the Toolman Taylor. Give me more power. Michigan 24 and Washington 21.
Claus, hang tight. We'll get a Nebraska prediction on the way. It's the Friday forecast at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
There's a weekend edition tomorrow, noon to 2 on KFOR and Hail Varsity YouTube and Twitter. Elijah Herbel, Justice is here, Chris Schmidt, and Claus is with us, and Real Red Reaction around 6:30 as we'll do our post-game thoughts. Nebraska-Rutgers. USC's at Minnesota -8.5. Let's get the music cranked up. Elijah, what do you think here? Minnesota-USC. I say SC 24-21, but they barely survive. They get out of Dinkytown with a win, but not a cover.
I don't see Minnesota having the offense to keep up with USC. I think they probably get theirs on the ground. Plenty of teams have been able to pile up some rushing yards against USC this season. I think that allows Minnesota to hang around, but I think USC pulls away late, and they get a 31-21 victory, win and cover for the Trojans.
All right. What do you say, Justice?
I have been pushing the narrative for a while that PJ Fleck coaches a bunch of losers and quitters up there in Minnesota. I love the Trojans in this one. Give me USC 34, Minnesota 21. PJ Fleck, pack it up, buddy.
The Maroon and Gold Bowl. Claus, what happens here, SC or Minnesota?
Well, to use my trademark phrase, don't be so quick, my amigos.
I don't think that's yours.
PJ Fleck is the type of coach that they're not always that great, but he seems to find a way to exploit a weakness. He'll find one little thing and do it. So I think he's going to be able to do it again, much like the crazy scorned girlfriend. They're going to poke holes in the Trojans. It's going to be 24 for Minnesota and 21 for USC.
Oh, poke holes in the Trojan. That's too good.
Yes. It's now weighing in on me. The crazy scorned girlfriend.
Okay.
All right, we get to Nebraska-Rutgers. Forgive me, but I got to see it happen, and I think it's another step back. This team's got a lot of work to do, and I think Rutgers, because of their special teams, make it happen tomorrow. Rutgers 24, Nebraska 21. Too much run game, too much kicking game, and too much win. Sorry.
I'll say the same thing I said before the Illinois game. Whichever team finds a more balanced offense in this game is going to be the winners. I like Dylan Raiola more than I like Callie McManus, and I think Nebraska's rushing attack can hold their own. They don't have to be fantastic. They just have to be enough of a thorn in the side of Rutgers that you can get balance offensively. I think Nebraska has more balance offensively. I think they win 28-20, a win and cover for the Skurs.
All right, Justice, what happens?
I think it's another case of deja vu for the Scarlet Knights. But this time, let's flip the scores, Schmitty. I say Nebraska's going to find a way to pull this out. I'm guzzling the Roulade this week. You know what I'm saying? 21-18 Rutgers. How does it feel to be on the flip side? Nebraska pulls it out close.
Wow. It's nice. Tell me, what happens, Claus? Nebraska or Rutgers, the Fighting Tony Sopranos?
About 45 seconds here.
Well, listen, Christopher, I'm a little disappointed in you. Look, I know that there are mothers, expectant mothers in the third trimester that will swear they have better kickers inside of them than we have on our roster.
Wow.
But I can't take a college football program seriously that calls themselves the Scarlet Knights, which sounds less like a fearsome football program and more like the type of novel or the title of a novel that Bunny's reading when you're on the golf course for the 158th straight weekend.
That's funny.
Nebraska 31 and Rutgers 21.
Claus, you be good.
Okay.